Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show Deep Dive, where we go beyond the headlines to uncover the stories, strategies, and mindsets driving today's top leaders.
So imagine
Let's
you
dive
just
in.
bought a Ferrari engine. It is, it's beautiful, it's unbelievably fast, and it represents the absolute pinnacle of modern technology.
Right, a total masterpiece.
Exactly. But you just strapped it to a wooden horse-drawn carriage.
No.
And now you're wondering why your commute hasn't gotten any faster. I mean, in fact, the carriage isn't moving forward at all. It's just vibrating wildly, violently, until it completely shakes itself apart.
Yeah, which is a terrifying visual, honestly.
Right. But that is exactly what is happening in thousands of organizations right now. So, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are on a mission to figure out a paradox that I know so many of you listening are feeling in your bones every single day.
Absolutely. Because we've been promised that artificial intelligence would make our professional lives lightning fast, right? Completely frictionless.
But instead, it feels like everything is suddenly moving through molasses. So we're going to explore why injecting AI into a standard company actually scales complexity instead of performance.
Yeah, and we'll map out the massive bottlenecks causing this friction, and then look at how the genuinely high-performing teams are entirely redesigning their decision processes to fix it.
Because it is the great irony of this current technological leap. If you look at the advisory data and track the internal signals from major companies over the last year, a very clear shift emerges.
It does. And what's fascinating here is that the bottleneck holding companies back is no longer about technical capability. It's not about whether your algorithm is good enough or whether you have the right enterprise software license.
Right. It's entirely about leadership coherence, the structural integrity of the carriage, to use that metaphor from earlier.
Precisely. So to understand why that wooden carriage is shaking apart, we have to look at the massive gap between the speed of this new AI engine and the speed of human decision-making.
Okay, let's unpack this right away, because AI instantly increases output, right? If you want 10 variations of a quarterly marketing strategy, you press a button and boom, 3 seconds later you have them.
Yep, 3 seconds.
But the leadership systems, like the actual mechanisms a company uses to decide which of those 10 plans to execute, they haven't sped up at all.
Exactly. And that creates this phenomenon known as the coordination ceiling.
Coordination ceiling.
Yeah, because every organization has a structural limit to how much information it can process, validate, and, coordinate across different teams.
Right.
Before generative AI, the bottleneck was almost always production. Like,
Right.
how fast can our human team physically research, write, and design this marketing plan?
Right. The production took 3 weeks, and the approval took maybe 3 days.
Exactly. But now, AI makes the thing instantly. But if your approval process still requires 3 different departments to weigh in, review the data, and sign off, well, you hit that coordination ceiling immediately.
Hold on. I'm struggling with that a bit. If the AI generates 10 incredibly detailed marketing plans in 3 seconds,
Wow.
why doesn't a manager just, I don't know, pick the best one and move on?
You'd think it would be that simple, right?
Yeah, like, why does it inevitably hit a ceiling? Why doesn't the speed of the output just translate to speed of execution?
Because in a traditional corporate structure, picking a plan isn't a single isolated action, it's a chain reaction.
Okay.
You generate an AI report. It looks highly plausible, but it's an AI, so someone has to fact check the data. Then legal has to review it for compliance.
Oh, right.
Then brand marketing has to ensure it matches the corporate voice.
Right.
Then the finance team has to approve the budget it suggests.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
AI didn't just give you 10 options. It just handed your organization 30 new validation tasks.
Precisely. AI doesn't simplify your organization by default. It actively amplifies complexity because it creates more cross-team dependencies and more decision points.
So wait, organizations aren't slow because they lack data anymore? They are slow because they have a massive pile of insights and zero decision infrastructure to process them.
They are literally choking on their own efficiency. Which brings us to a crucial concept here, which is decision latency.
Decision latency, like latency in computing, right?
Right.
The agonizing delay before a web page loads.
Exactly like that. In business, decision latency is the delay between generating a valuable insight and actually taking action on it.
And because we have so many more insights being generated so much faster,
Yeah.
that latency gap is widening.
Yeah.
The insights are instant, but they just get trapped.
But you get trapped in a swamp of unclear ownership. So the AI might flag a critical optimization. It says, hey, here is the optimal pricing strategy for the next quarter based on real-time market shifts.
A brilliant insight.
Brilliant. but it just sits there. Why? Because it gets bogged down by risk hesitation and layered approvals.
Because no one knows who actually has the unilateral authority to push the button.
Right. Nobody wants to change the prices based on an AI recommendation without getting yelled at by a vice president.
Yeah.
So the data is incredibly fast, but the decision infrastructure is broken.
So if no one wants to make the final call on these major main workflow decisions, does that explain why companies seem to be hiding behind these tiny, isolated AI experiments?
Yes.
Because I noticed a major recurring theme in the material we're looking at today, this idea of the pilot trap.
The pilot trap is exactly why it happens. An organization knows they need to adopt AI. The board is demanding it. The CEO is talking about it constantly.
Everyone is talking about it.
But because the core decision architecture is too rigid to actually integrate it into the main revenue-generating workflows, they launch a dozen fragmented pilot programs instead.
Right. So IT is testing out a coding assistant for the developers. Human Resources is playing around with an AI resume screener.
Yeah, marketing bought a subscription to some generative copy tool.
But none of these pilots talk to each other. There is no end-to-end workflow ownership.
Absolutely zero. There's no cross-functional alignment linking them together. They are just isolated science experiments happening in silos.
It's like buying a bunch of hyper-advanced kitchen gadgets.
Yeah.
You've got the Bluetooth sous vide machine, the AI-powered smart blender, the laser-guided meat thermometer.
But you have no head chef and no recipe.
Exactly. Everyone in the kitchen is just chopping things at random, throwing ingredients into different pots, and hoping a Michelin star meal magically appears at the pass.
And when that meal inevitably doesn't appear, or it tastes terrible, who is expected to fix it? The middle managers.
The middle management squeeze.
If the company is the wooden carriage and AI is the Ferrari engine, the middle managers are the ones physically trying to hold the wheels to the axles while everything vibrates at 200 miles an hour.
Wow.
They are the most strained, overloaded layer in the modern corporate structure right now.
Because the mess gets dumped squarely on their shoulders.
Exactly. We expect middle managers to translate high-level, often vague AI strategy from the executive suite into daily execution.
Right. The executives just say, we're an AI-first company now, make it happen.
Yeah, and we expect them to take these fragmented, isolated AI tools and somehow integrate them into deeply established legacy workflows.
All while managing human performance, calming employee anxieties about job security, and handling massive change management.
And they have to do all of this without any clarity from the top down. The executives don't change the underlying rules of how the company operates.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, middle managers are breaking down because we've essentially asked them to manually bridge the gap between AI speed and structural chaos.
They are serving as the human integration layer for a poorly designed system. When a pilot program fails to deliver ROI, or an AI tool creates a bottleneck with the legal department, it's not a failure of the middle manager's competence.
Right. It's a failure of the organizational design they are forced to operate within. Which brings us to a really heavy realization.
Yeah.
All of this structural friction, all of this bottlenecking, it has a direct, very real human cost. It is completely changing what it feels like to be exhausted at work.
It's a totally different kind of exhaustion now.
I want to ask you listening right now, have you ever ended a workday feeling utterly, totally drained? Not because you produced a massive volume of tangible work, but because you had to make 100 tiny, vague judgment calls about AI-generated drafts.
That's exactly what we're talking about here. We are seeing a massive shift in how we understand workplace fatigue.
Because historically, burnout was driven primarily by workload.
Right. Right. It was about the sheer volume of hours you worked or the number of boxes you had to check on an assembly line. Today, the data shows that burnout is driven by ambiguity and cognitive strain.
Because you aren't just doing a task anymore, you are constantly evaluating a machine's attempt at the task.
Exactly. Think about the traditional process of creating something from scratch. Say you have to write a complex project proposal.
Right.
It takes time, yes, but it follows a clear, linear, creative process. You know the steps.
Right. You outline, you draft, you refine.
But now employees are spending their days reviewing AI outputs. They aren't writing, they are editing and auditing.
It's this state of always-on judgment.
That's the perfect phrase for it. You generate a draft with AI, and now you have to constantly evaluate, is this accurate? Did it hallucinate a statistic?
Is this the right tone for our brand? Does this violate any of our internal compliance rules?
Who do I need to clear this with before I send it? Employees are operating without clear expectations and navigating entirely unclear accountability.
Because AI doesn't actually give you the final answer. It gives you a highly plausible, incredibly confident draft that you now have to take personal responsibility for.
Yeah, which is exhausting.
I was thinking about this with software developers. A coding assistant can spit out a 500-line block of code in 2 seconds.
Right.
But if there's a bug in it, the developer has to trace the logic of a machine they don't fully understand. Sometimes it takes longer to debug the AI's code than it would have taken to just write the code from scratch.
And making those continuous micro-judgment calls causes profound decision fatigue. Every single piece of AI output requires a human validation step.
Wow.
If a company hasn't redesigned its system to handle that entirely new type of workflow, that compounding complexity turns into massive cognitive strain for every single employee.
I think that's such a validating point for anyone feeling overwhelmed right now. If you are listening to this and nodding along, you need to hear this. This is not a people problem. It is a system-designed failure.
Absolutely.
You aren't burning out because you can't handle the new technology. You're burning out because the system you work in wasn't built to handle the technology, and you are the shock absorber.
That is the reality. The ambiguity-driven burnout is simply the symptom. The lack of leadership coherence is the disease.
Okay, so we see the systemic failures clearly now. We see the coordination ceiling, we see the pilot traps, we see the middle managers holding the axles together, and we see the very real human cost of this ambiguity.
It's a lot.
It is. So how do we fix the wooden carriage? Do we just strip it down to the chassis? Because the data is very clear. The organizations that are breaking through, the ones actually seeing massive performance gains from AI, aren't doing it by buying more AI tools.
No, they are entirely redesigning their leadership operating system.
What does that actually look like on the ground?
It looks like a fundamental shift in philosophy. High-performing organizations realize that speed without clarity is chaos. So they shift from optimizing workflows to optimizing decision flow.
Decision flow.
Yes. They provide intense, almost ruthless decision clarity. They explicitly define decision ownership.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning they dictate exactly who has the authority to validate an AI output and push it live. They define explicit escalation paths.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. If an AI system flags a critical supply chain risk, exactly whose desk does that alert go to, and how fast must they act? They set clear approval thresholds.
Wait, I have to stop you there, and I want to push back on this a bit.
Go for it.
Because I hear you saying defining escalation paths and setting approval thresholds, and honestly to me, and probably to a lot of people listening, that sounds dangerously close to adding more bureaucracy and red tape.
I can see that.
Which is exactly what we just spent 10 minutes saying is slowing everyone down. Aren't we just adding more rules to a system that is already choking on them?
That is the natural reaction, and it's a vital distinction we need to make here. We have to separate the idea of bureaucracy from the idea of decision architecture.
Okay.
They sound similar, but they operate entirely differently. Bureaucracy is fundamentally about adding layers to avoid risks.
Right.
It's requiring 5 different signatures on a document because no single person wants to be held accountable if things go wrong. It's the classic corporate cover-your-own-backside maneuver.
Yes, CCing 20 people on an email just so you can say, well, you were all in the loop if the project fails.
Exactly. But a good leadership operating system, a strong decision architecture, is the exact opposite of that. It's about designating exactly who makes the call so the team can move instantly. It removes layers.
Okay, let's make this concrete.
Let's look at a concrete example. Let's say an AI system monitors your supply chain and flags a sudden 20% spike in raw material costs from a vendor. In a broken bureaucratic system, that alert gets posted in a Slack channel. 3 different middle managers debate who should tell the VP. They schedule a meeting for next Tuesday to discuss the alert.
And by the time a decision is made, you've lost tens of thousands of dollars.
Because the latency is huge.
Right.
But in an organization with a strong leadership operating system, the rule is pre-written. The architecture dictates any material cost spike over 15% automatically routes to the head of procurement, who has unilateral authority to pause the vendor contract for 24 hours.
Wow.
No meetings, no consensus building, no CCing half the company. Just immediate execution.
Ah, I see. So you are pre-making the decisions about how to make decisions.
Yeah.
It's about removing the ambiguity that causes the burnout in the first place.
Yes.
You want adding a layer, you are building a fast lane.
Precisely. And that ties directly into how high performers assign workflow ownership.
Right. Instead of just handing a new generative AI tool to the marketing department and saying, have fun.
Exactly. They focus on end-to-end process ownership. They tie the AI integration to measurable, specific outcomes. The AI becomes embedded into the execution of a goal rather than just being a shiny new gadget layered on top of an old, broken process.
Which naturally leads to the third thing these high-performing companies do, reducing cognitive load.
Mm.
If you want this to work, you have to actively simplify your reporting structures and your communication pathways.
That's the key.
I loved this phrasing from the deep dive material. The goal isn't more visibility. The goal is less friction.
That is the paradigm shift. For the last 20 years, we thought that the ultimate strategic advantage for a CEO was speed of execution. Like, how fast can we physically build the product or write the code?
Right.
But AI has completely leveled that playing field. Everyone can execute fast now. Every single company on earth has a Ferrari engine.
Yeah.
So the new strategic advantage isn't speed of execution, it is speed of aligned decisions. Clarity is what creates scalable performance now.
Speed of aligned decisions. I
Yeah.
love that.
If your team knows exactly what they own, exactly what they don't own, and exactly how decisions are made, they can utilize AI to move incredibly fast without shaking the carriage apart.
Here's where it gets really interesting as we pull back and look at the big picture across everything we've discussed today. The core revelation here, the real aha moment that I took away from all of this, is that AI is not the transformation.
No, it's
AI is the stress test. It is a giant, unforgiving magnifying glass being held up to your company's organizational chart.
it really is.
It is revealing in real time whether your leadership system can actually handle speed, complexity, and scale. And right now, it is brutally exposing the companies that cannot.
Yeah.
The winners in this next era of business aren't going to be the ones with the most technologically advanced algorithms. They're going to be the ones who are the most operationally disciplined.
I couldn't agree more. The tech is just a mirror reflecting your existing organizational hygiene. And for you listening, I really encourage you to look at your own team's workflows tomorrow.
Yeah, look at the friction points.
Look at where the AI-generated insights just sit there gathering digital dust. Look at where decisions get stuck in committee. And ask yourself, are we trying to solve a system design failure by just buying more technology?
Because if you are just adding a bigger, heavier engine to a weaker, older carriage.
You have to fix the leadership operating system first.
That's such a crucial perspective shift. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something for you to explore on your own that builds on everything we've just unpacked today.
Okay.
Right now, we are mostly dealing with generative AI, tools that just give us fast insights, drafts, and options. And as we've seen, that alone is already stressing our leadership structures to the absolute breaking point.
Barely holding it together.
But what happens when the next wave of autonomous AI agents arrives? Agents that don't just draft an email, but read your inbox, draft the reply, and send it without asking.
Oh, wow.
If your company's decision infrastructure can't even handle fast answers today,
Yeah.
how in the world will it survive an AI that actively tries to make the decisions for you?
Thanks for listening to the
tomorrow?
Breakfast Leadership Show. If today's conversation resonated with you, we invite you to explore the Breakfast Leadership Operating System, a structured approach that increases decision velocity, clarifies accountability, and stabilizes execution across leadership teams. Leaders can learn more and schedule an executive diagnostic by visiting breakfastleadership.com. Until next time, keep leading with clarity.